This is how I make a mitten on my 48 needle circular knitting machine. Everyone seemed to really like my fingerless glove tutorial, so it's very similar to that. If you have not made a mitten or a glove before on your machine, definitely check out that video. That one's definitely a beginner friendly one, and this one's probably the next step, you could say. So first you want to cast on with waste yarn, and I do about 5 or 6 rows of waste yarn. And then you're going to put on your working yarn, and you want to do 50 rows of your working yarn. The 50 rows does not include your cast on yarn. And then you're going to do another set of 5 or 6 rows of waste yarn at the end, and then remove it from your machine. And here's the waste yarn, and remove it from your machine and set aside. Now we're going to crochet the thumb. So I do a magic circle, and I have a slowed down video of how to do a magic circle, so check that out in my tips and how-tos. But you do your magic circle to start. And now that you have our magic circle, we are going to do 12 single crochets into the magic circle. So a single crochet is you go under the magic circle yarn with your hook, yarn over, you have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops, and that's 1 single crochet. And so we want to do 12 of these, and I will meet you back when I have done 12. All right, now that we've done 12, we're going to pull tight our circle so they're closer together, the 2 ends, and then we're going to slip stitch into our first single crochet to close the circle. So there's our slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 1, and now we're able to start working on our next row for our thumb. And where I just did this chain 1, I put in a stitch saver so I know where the beginning of my rows are, because when you're working in the round it can get kind of confusing on where you're at. So this just kind of helps you to keep track of where you're at. So now I'm going to single crochet another 12 single crochets around and around and around until you get the length that you want. We do not add any more stitches because we're not going out. We want to go up to make like a tube for our thumb. So we just work in those single crochets in the front all the way around. And so you go through a single crochet, yarn over, pull through, you have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through, and that's a single crochet. Go through 1 single crochet, yarn over, 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2. And again, you can be counting these, you want to do 12 because we want to keep our rows even. And so now we're back to our starting point, and we're just going to continue in the round doing 12 single crochets. And you're going to continue to work in the round until you get the length of a tube that you want to fit your thumb. And you're going to see that I move up my stitch marker every now and then I'm also fitting it around my thumb to make sure it's the size I want. And 12 seemed to be the right size, 12 single crochets. So now I'm at the end of how long I want to make my thumb for my mitten. And then the very last thing you're going to do once you get back to your starting point, so that's why it's nice to have that stitch marker so you can see which row, is your starting point, we're going to do a slip stitch. And I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 13 rows for my thumb. So if you have a shorter thumb, you can do less rows. Longer thumb, you can do a little bit more. So now we're just going to do a slip stitch into that last row. I have one loop on the hook. I push it through the single crochet, yarn over, and pull through. And there's my slip stitch to join. Then you can cut it from your yarn skein, but you want to make sure you have a very long tail at the very end because you're going to use this to attach it to your mitten. And there's our thumb, and we can set this aside now for later, and we can go back to working on the palm part of our mitten. But there's our thumb. So now back to our main part of our mitten. We have them right side out, and we're going to join the two ends of our tube together to flatten it. And this is why the waste yarn comes in handy to be able to do this. And you want to make sure it's a high contrasting yarn that you used on your waste yarn so you can see the stitches. And if you did do any color chains throughout your project, you want to make sure you tie those ends together on the inside before you stitch together your tube. So that's what I'm doing here, since I did some color changes. And now we're going to stitch them together. And I put the ends of the working yarn to the bottom, and I count to 24 because we had 48 needles. So I count 24 on each side, and then the two 24ths stitches that are at the top, I take a crochet hook and we join them back and forth together. And I forgot to zoom in on this, but if you go back to my pinned fingerless glove tutorial, I show a close-up of this, of stitching it back and forth, and it's pretty much just slip stitching it together. And this is how we close our tube and flatten it. And we're going to do this on both sides. So here's our one side, and then when we get to the end yarn, we're just going to pull it through our last stitch to lock it in place. If on any of these steps you would like a close-up of how it's done, please let me know in the comments and I'd be happy to do that for you. And then we're going to do the same slip stitch all the way down on the other side. And then you can knot it if you need to. And now we're going to remove our waste yarn. I have another video with a close-up on how to remove your waste yarn without cutting it out in my tips and tricks. So you pull it out on one side and then the other. And please like for part 2, it's going to come up on how to finish our mitten.